This is shocking to hear as the newest Vancouver Canuck is already on his way out of town, with a report revealing an incoming trade as Vancouver starts to get back to a fully healthy roster. But the search for a replacement may not be too far away with recent reports. We're going to break it down all that in this episode of Canucks Digest. But first, if you're not a part of the 42% of viewers who are already subscribed and you want to stay up to date on all things Canucks, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the episodes when they drop. And with that, let's hop straight into the first topic of the day, which is that Lukas Reichel is gone. So there was a tweet that came out earlier today from Canucks Army and as well as Rick Dhaliwal on Halford and Bruff, saying that the Canucks have made Lukas Reichel available for trade per their report, with Rick Dhaliwal himself speaking on this, saying that Lukas Reichel was a healthy scratch last night, 1 point in 13 games, no shots on goal in the last 6, with Höglander and Blueger not far away, a Lekkerimäki call-up not far away. Reichel is now available. I heard last night that you can get Reichel out of Vancouver. I think they're okay with this, trying to move him is what I was told last night. So this is going to be a big development, obviously, because Lukas Reichel was the newest Vancouver Canuck. They literally just brought him in here, and now he's already on his way out. We know that with Patrik Allvin, we're due for at least one of these every year. We had that happen with Daniel Sprong last year, where he was brought in and then just shipped out as soon as he got here. And now it is the case with Lukas Reichel, as like Dhaliwal was saying, we're getting Höglander back, we're getting Blueger back to full health. Then Lekkerimäki could be getting called up as he's been playing a bit better as well. Get him back in that roster. Now, you don't need Lukas Reichel. This was a low risk, high reward type of trade that didn't exactly pan out that way and ended up being a low risk, low reward trade, as Lukas Reichel appeared in 13 games with the Canucks since trading it for him on October 24th. And while the Canucks hoped Reichel could be a stopgap answer for them at the second line center, it just hasn't worked out to this point. Reichel has registered just 1 assist through his 13 games with the Canucks and has a minus 5 plus minus rating over those games. Most recently, even before the Canucks acquired David Kampf, Reichel was moved from 2C to the fourth line wing position Thursday night against the Dallas Stars. He was a healthy scratch, and the Canucks acquired Reichel from the Chicago Blackhawks last month, sending a 2027 fourth round pick to Chicago. And the club was hopeful that Reichel, who Chicago selected at 17th overall in the 2020 draft, could find a new level to his game with a change of scenery. The book on Reichel was that while we had some interesting offensive looks, his lack of defensive ability would be hard to overcome. Unfortunately for the Canucks, that's been the story for Reichel in Vancouver so far. So Lukas Reichel is on his way out of Vancouver. This was kind of something that we saw coming, where usually when a guy is a healthy scratch for a couple games for one game or just a couple games, and pairing that with not a lot of efficiency, we were seeing all the reports with Nils Höglander last year about how he was a scratch with Rick Tocchet and things like that. There might have been some things with their relationship there that had to be patched up, where people worried he was going to be on the move, because that was a trend with this Vancouver Canucks team under Rick Tocchet, where if a guy was scratched for a couple of games, he was likely on his way out of town. Now with Adam Foote, that seems to be a trend that is continuing, or at least in the case of Lukas Reichel. Overall, I think Lukas Reichel was brought in to be given more than he could manage. I think you bring him in here as a 2C stopgap center, and he just did not fill in that void necessarily. And then as soon as they were able to move him on a different position, they bumped him down to the fourth line because it clearly was not working. He was asked to be a top 6 guy, and he's more of a middling bottom 6 guy. And that's just the reality of the matter. And it sucks to see that happen for a guy that was drafted so high and we had expectations for, because we know that this organization is really good at taking guys from teams that maybe they weren't getting the opportunities they deserved, or they just weren't really gelling with that organization and they had a lot more potential than they were reaching with that other team. They come over to Vancouver and they have career years. We saw it happen with Conor Garland. We saw it happen with Jake DeBrusk. We've seen it happen with so many Vancouver Canucks. Kiefer Sherwood is another big one as well, where we bring in these guys and they have career seasons. Pius Suter, before he was shipped out, was another one of those guys as well. So there's been a history of guys that they bring in from other teams to Vancouver that weren't necessarily great on those other teams or didn't have the opportunities that they were deserving of. They come over to Vancouver, they do very well. This was not the case with Lukas Reichel, and it just was kind of writing on the wall at that point. When he was banged up in that his second last game for the Canucks, I thought that it was kind of this oh crap moment where it's like, all right, here we go, have another long-term injury with a guy that we just got in here, but with a guy that wasn't really doing much aside from getting cardio. Now they can make sense. Now they can kind of get rid of him and try and get something for him, rather than him having faced an injury. God forbid, you'd hate to see those happen, and having to lose him for nothing. Now Vancouver can go out, make a trade, go make something happen, try and fix up this roster as they get fully healthy, with those guys coming back as well. So let us know what you guys think about this move down in the comments below. Are you upset about it? Are you supportive of it? Let us know your guys' opinion. But that's going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is a Finning replacement. And this was a bit of play on words, because Brad Lambert is on the trade block, as league sources say, per Frank Saravelli, that the Jets have given 2022 first-round pick Brad Lambert's representation permission to find a trade partner. Lambert, who's 21, has 1 goal in 4 games for the Jets, but in limited minutes this season. And when you look at his stats, yes, this isn't going to necessarily jump out at you on paper, but this is a guy who was drafted in the first round, 30th overall. In the AHL, he's done a lot better than he has on the NHL stage, but even with this season with the Winnipeg Jets, he had 1 goal in 4 games. It's not a great sample size. You would like to see him get a little bit more in there. However, he wasn't playing on a lot of minutes. So if he's making the most of his minutes, you bring him over to Vancouver, that's something where he could be a really good fit in there as well, and trying to maintain some of that production he had in the AHL and bring it over to the NHL in Vancouver. And the other thing that I really like about it, I know you guys are going to jump on me and say, this guy doesn't really have anything special to him. When you look at what he's done in the NHL, he hasn't done anything since he was drafted in the first round. This is a first round bust, if anything. And in most cases, I would tend to agree with you. However, when he's on the Jets, he's not getting a ton of playing time, because the Jets, they're a front-loaded team. It's almost like Jake DeBrusk when he was in Boston, where Jake DeBrusk wasn't getting a crazy amount of playing time, but he was getting just enough to make a splash on that team. And then Vancouver, they saw that potential and they brought him in here, and now it has been working out fantastic for him. He's our best power play scorer. He's one of our best goal scorers on the team, and he was a top 6 guy waiting to happen, just needed to be on the right team and not on a crappy team like the shitty Boston Bruins. Then you bring him over to Vancouver, does a lot better. This could be the exact same case for Lambert, where you bring in a guy who hasn't necessarily had the opportunities that maybe a guy of his caliber, being a first-round pick, was deserving of, or just the Jets just don't see in him what the Canucks could see. That brings a pretty interesting opportunity, I think, towards bringing him in here. And the other thing that I'm really looking at here is that he brings a very, very cap-friendly contract for a short time, but at least you get a pretty good basis there as far as what you would have to extend him for if he doesn't have a crazy flashy 2 years in Vancouver. You bring him in less than $1 million, $886 and $666, but you have him on year 2 of 3, so you have the rest of this year to play with him. Then you have next year as well, where he can try and earn that next contract. But if you bring him in here and he doesn't necessarily work out in the greatest sense, but he's good enough to stay around for an extension, then you can get him at a very cheap rate, where his re-signing and an expectation for his projection on that contract would not be nearly as high as if he was coming in here off of a $1.5 million contract or something like that, and will be due something in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 million by the time of extension comes up. When you bring in a guy like this, by the time this contract is up, he could be only due about $1 million a year, maybe 1.25 or something like that. Especially with the cap going up, that brings a lot of friendliness to Vancouver, where we know that they're going to be in a very scary cap situation over the next couple of seasons. You have Quinn Hughes with his big decision coming up. You have Kiefer Sherwood that you got to re-sign. There's a lot of other names that are coming up for Vancouver that are young guys as well, that they're going to have to re-sign, that are finishing those entry-level contracts or those rookie contracts. So then you have a lot less to worry about. You bring in a guy where, yes, there's a lot more proven centers that are going to be out there, but they're going to be a lot more expensive, and they may be on longer term deals or shorter term deals. But if you bring in a guy that is getting paid more money, if he's on a short-term deal, by the time he has to re-sign, that's going to be a much bigger total overall that you're going to have to re-sign him to a lot sooner, especially when you have Quinn Hughes and Kiefer Sherwood to worry about in the short term. But if you bring in a guy that's on a long-term deal that is getting paid expensive amounts, like maybe $4 million, like if we're looking at Braden Shen, like a type of player like that, you bring in someone like that that's on a long-term deal, yeah, you can get the other team to fit the bill a little bit on that and kind of work something out as far as compensation goes there, but you're still going to have him under contract for a long time, and that's still going to be something that's against the cap for quite some time. But you bring in a guy like Lambert, where, yes, it's not going to be very flashy on paper, but he has some capabilities and maybe just needs to be on the right team and isn't on the Winnipeg Jets as a front-loaded team, or is constantly a team that's fighting for roster spots. Bring him over to Vancouver, where, unfortunately, we have roster spots to spare. We have so many roster spots where we can fit guys in because of all the damn injuries that we've had this season. So if you bring in a guy like Lambert on an $800,000 contract, on with 2 more years left as a result of that, or a year and a half, basically, or a year and 3/4 or so, that you have to work with a cap situation that you won't necessarily have to worry about, or it's one less player that you have to worry about in your cap situation, I say do it. I think you bring this kid in here. He's 21 years old. He's 6'1". He has a decent amount of size. He can be that bottom 6 center that you can have when Höglander comes back, because then you can put him in there, you plug him on there. then you can kind of move some of the guys around there and play with this depth chart a little bit more as they get fully healthy. I think that's the problem with Vancouver right now, is they feel like their backs against the wall because they have so many injuries and they're constantly having to think on the fly with these trades or with these call-ups or with these roster moves, that if you bring in a guy like Lambert, brings you financial security because he's not going to be expensive, brings you a little bit of upside where, yeah, he's going to be a risky investment, but he can bring a lot of upside if he is able to bring what he can bring to the table. It just wasn't available in New York. And then he has the size as well, which Vancouver needs a little bit more size there down the middle as well. I think this could be a pretty good move for Vancouver, but let us know what you guys think about this as well. Do you guys think I'm crazy? Do you guys think that that would be a good move? And what do you guys think about the Reichel situation? And would you be open to the Vancouver Canucks trading Reichel and potentially a draft pick for a guy like Brad Lambert? Let us know down in the comments below, and stay tuned for tomorrow's episode where Mark is going to go into the Brad Lambert stuff a little bit more fully and give you guys a bit more of the in-depth story on that. I was just offering my general take on who would be a decent replacement for Reichel while in the meantime as we get fully healthy. And I think Brad Lambert is that guy. But let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.